For as long as I've been covering IndyCar on this channel, I've kept tabs on Alex Rossi. It just fascinated me how things went so wrong so quickly. And 16-year-old me back in 2021 even made a video talking about how his year had gone up to that point. It was really just a quick overview, sharing my brief thoughts on everything that happened that year. This video, however, isn't a quick overview, nor does it deserve one. It's a year that, much like a frog in a 10th grade biology class, will be dissected and studied for scientific purposes. 2 years later, we're going full circle, as in this video, I tell the story of Alexander Rossi's abysmal 2021 IndyCar season. Despite how anemic Rossi's 2020 season had been, hopes were high coming into the new year. His performances had definitely improved towards the end of the season, and at the beginning of 2021, Rossi had scored the overall win at the Rolex 24 at Daytona. I'd even slated Rossi as not just a championship contender, but my personal favorite going into the season, as seen in a terrible preseason prediction video that you're about to see now.
Prediction number 14. Alex Rossi will win the championship.
Many people are thinking that 2020 was just a one-off dip, and that 2021 would see Alex Rossi come back to prominence. But as you're about to find out, that trampoline he was allegedly going to use to rebound was instead a sinkhole. To kick the season off, the IndyCars raced in Barber, where things were looking good. Rossi would qualify for the race in second, only 0.06 of a second off the pole. But despite having a great qualifying performance and showing some decent speed early on, a botched strategy meant he wasn't a factor throughout a majority of this race. Rossi would finish in 9th. Not too good, but it was a downside better than race number 2 of the season in St. Pete, where after starting a mediocre 11th, contact with Graham Rahal gave Rossi a puncture, neutering his race and relegating him down to a 21st place finish. Texas was a mixed bag, with the first race being okay, as Rossi brought it home in 8th. Race 2, however, would see him get taken out in a second start crash in the span of about 6 months, ending Rossi's day before he could even work up a sweat. This was the first of only 2 DNFs the whole year, and this is a point that should be talked about. Although this year was pretty bad, Rossi didn't DNF often, and that's a decent silver lining. Usually in this series, I'll talk about years where drivers DNF very often, or in the case of Jack Miller's 1997 season, DNF'd in every single race. Rossi, however, avoided DNFs like the plague. It was really just bad performances and rookie mistakes sprinkled throughout the year that made this year so bad. If I'm being honest, his results weren't too horrible if you blank out his name and take away any background of speed. If you give these results to a middle-of-the-road driver, it's gonna be a good year. But these results coming from a guy that just a few years prior was contending for championships and race wins often, merely fighting for top 10s just isn't good enough. The start crash in race 2 in Texas kicked off a pretty rough month of May. We'll get the Indy GP out of the way first, as in that case, Rossi had a quiet weekend, starting 14th and finishing 7th. The Indy 500, meanwhile, was a big kick in the nuts. At a race he's won in the past, nearly won twice, and has always shown solid speed at, the way things went in 2021 had to have hurt. After a 10th place start, Rossi's race was derailed after a caution for Stephen Wilson forced him and Scott Dixon on track as he ran out of gas, ruining the duo's race. It was a really disheartening way for the month to go, but things would actually improve after this. The doubleheader in Detroit was overall solid. Rossi started race 1 in 2nd before finishing 7th, and then took a 7th place start in race 2 to finish 13th. Road America was a solid showing, as he finished 9th. Then after this, we'd hit a phase of inconsistency that would dog him from now until season's end. This stretch would see some of his best performances of the year, and also some of his biggest blunders. Mid-Ohio was a big bright spot, with Rossi getting his first of just 3 top 5s the whole year. Starting 6th and finishing 5th, Rossi did decent. Nashville, however, was less than ideal. He showed good speed at first, qualifying 3rd and running 2nd in the race early on, but after a poorly timed yellow relegated him down to 8th, a bad attempt at an overtake from Pato O'Ward would force Rossi wide, dropping Alex down to last. He made it up to the top 15 again with a couple laps to go, but after his teammate crashed and the race was restarted, Rossi dropped down from 13th to 17th by the checkered flag. Nashville felt like another kick below the waist, but after this at the IMS road course, Rossi one-upped his previous best finish from the year, getting a 4th place finish from a 10th place start. But after the highest high so far came the lowest low. In the later stages of the race at Gateway, Rossi, after starting 7th, was in the catbird seat to take a surefire podium, his first of the season. But on lap 200, Rossi lost control and hit the outside wall, throwing away what could have been a great result. The way this race went was one last gut punch, and with a multi-week break between Gateway and Portland, it ate away at both Rossi and IndyCar fans as a whole. But as the series came back, Rossi would atone for his mistakes. Race number 14 of the 2021 season would see IndyCar return to Portland for the first time since 2019. Rossi had finished third there back then, and 2021, Rossi would go one better. From a second place start, Rossi would stay there by the checkered flag. In a year filled with frustration, this result was a silver lining. A thin silver lining for sure, but a silver lining nevertheless. On a more unfortunate note, this would also be his last top 5 of the year. Things for Rossi cratered back down to the center of the earth in Laguna Seca, as a pretty clumsy spin ruined what could have been a decent day. Rossi had speed, qualifying second and running great early on, just behind teammate Herta. Had Rossi not spun, he would have likely finished on the podium that day, but instead, Rossi was relegated down to a 25th place finish. And finally, to cap the year off at Long Beach, Alex was stuck in the midfield, starting 15th and finishing 6th. Some may look at Rossi's year and say that the season wasn't too bad, and that is fair taking only the results into picture. But when you factor in everything else, it makes a year show its true feathers. Compared to how Rossi was for so long, a year where a run outside the midfield is a top tier run is just bad. Rossi at one point in time would kick the faces in of his competition, and this year was pretty much the opposite. Another thing that made this year worse was another young American. Colin Herta, driving for the exact same team, kicked Rossi's ass. I know YouTube won't like me saying that, but it's true. Take St. Pete for instance, where Herta won in dominant fashion, while Rossi was nowhere near him even before he picked up the puncture. That may be an unfair comparison, so let's talk about Long Beach, where Herta won from 14th on the grid, while Rossi made it up to just 6th from a 15th place start. Or how about Laguna Seca, where Herta was just plain faster. Rossi ended 2021 10th in points, his second worst points finish, only beating out his rookie season back in 2016. Along with his second worst points finish, Rossi had his worst average finish, and led the least amount of laps in a year so far in his career. All previously mentioned stats run through to the end of the 2022 IndyCar season, with just 1 podium, 3 top 5s, 9 top 10s, an average finish of 12.3, and a 10th place points finish. Rossi's 2021 IndyCar season was nothing short of disappointing. Thank you for watching, and have a great afternoon.